Thank you. Good morning. I am Leah Thompson. I have to look at the script so I know my name. I am Leah Thompson, proud graduate of Chatham College, class of 1993, and president of the Alumni Association Board of Directors. It is my immense pleasure to welcome you all here today to our annual meeting of the Alumni Association and Reunion Awards presentation. To kick off this morning's ceremony, Stephanie Adamczak, MBA, class of 2010, will lead us in singing The Alma Mater. The lyrics are located on the back of your program, so please join her in singing. Thank you.
All right, ready? Here we go. While building dreams anew, seeking for all that's true, our alma mater, we pledge our faith in you, like cornerstones of temples, polished and gleaming, strong and secure, we'll shape our lives to be mansions of beauty to endure.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, reunion is a time of reflection, of laughter, of shared stories and strengthened friendships, which continue to thrive despite the challenges of our daily lives. In this chapel, we represent 26 states and 3 countries. Alumni have traveled all the way from Germany to Canada, from California to Maine, and we represent the years 1953 to 2019. That's pretty awesome. We're going to clap again anyway. We are so proud to have you back. Imagine nearly 70 years of Chatham experiences in one room. I would like to take a moment to thank all of the 150th anniversary ambassadors and reunion class committee volunteers who worked hard to make this a memorable weekend. We ask anyone who made phone calls, sent emails or notes, organized class parties, collected class notes, or made a class gift to please stand and be recognized. Thank you. Each year, countless hours are given by a group of dedicated volunteers, your Alumni Association Board of Directors. Our board is made up of 20 undergraduates and graduates who give of their time and talents. They attend meetings on campus, participate in conference calls, volunteer as mentors, staff events, and provide input on strategic planning. I urge you to take a moment and meet our board. They humble me with their dedication to our alma mater. I ask all of our Alumni Association board members in attendance to please stand and be recognized. And to our president, David Feingold, and his wife, Sue, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to hearing your perspective on our beloved alma mater during the President's retrospective. Now, for this morning's main event, recognition of our 2019 Alumni Award recipients. And I say alumni because that's the right way to pronounce it. I was corrected just a couple days ago. Not alumnae, alumni. So, we are presenting 5 awards today. The full biographies of each of these remarkable women are in your program. First, I invite our 2019 Distinguished Alumna, Dr. Lynette Charity, Class of 74, to the stage to deliver this morning's keynote address.
Alms for the poor. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. Let me see if I can get this mic the right way. Let me start out by saying that my love for Chatham College started with Kathy Cusack. So, Kathy, do you remember that freshman questionnaire that we had to fill out? That one question? The question was, are you willing to room with a person not of your race? It was 1970. Well, I said yes. Kathy said yes. And we became ebony and ivory, living together in perfect harmony. And it's been that way for 49 years. And the other interesting thing that some of you may not know is that I used to go over to Kathy's house. She lived in Mount Lebanon, and she had these cousins, and their names were Joan and John. Now, what is her last name? Cusack. They were 8 and 4. I should have been nicer to them. I really should have, but they were little kids. And now, I'm lost. They're famous, and I can't do anything about that. You see, everyone here is here because of the support of parents, relatives, friends of family, and even strangers who just showed us random acts of kindness. I'm here because there are people who opened doors for me while others tried to close them. Sometimes a small gift can change someone's life forever and open doors for those who don't have the keys. Peggy Donaldson, Chatham's admission director in 1969, opened a door by giving me a gift that changed my life. I remember my mom telling me, Lynette, some lady just called here from some school up in Pittsburgh, and she wants you to come up there, and she wants you to get up there and so you can interview. And I told her, I don't have any money to do that. And Peggy Donaldson told her, I will send Lynette a bus ticket. That bus ticket came, and I took a Greyhound 20-hour bus ride to Chatham. Upon arrival, I met Peggy. I met Nancy Hofsus, her sidekick. And a few years ago, Nancy saw me, and she remembered the outfit that I wore to Chatham that day. I don't understand why she did. It was a beige bell-bottom pants, polyester suit with red pleather trim on the collar and on the cuffs, a red pleather beret with a feather in it. My mom had gotten it at a thrift shop, and platform shoes. All right? And I said, she says, it just stuck in my mind. But hey, it was the 1970s and disco was king. So in my interview with Peggy, she asked, would you like to attend Chatham? I said, "Yes, ma'am, but my daddy can't afford to send me here." Chatham cost $3,000 that year, and my father earned $6,000 a year driving a truck. Do the math. Peggy looked me right in the eyes and asked, "Lynette, do you want to attend Chatham?" Without hesitation, I said, "Yes, ma'am." I returned home with an acceptance letter and a 4-year scholarship package. Peggy was a door opener. Thank you, Peggy and Nancy. And here I am today with so much appreciation in my heart because it was Chatham that gave me the start to my 41-year career in anesthesiology. Rather than me being a high school graduate with a job where I asked, "Do you want fries with that?" I must thank first Reverend William Trimble Beatty for getting this party started in 1869. And here we are 150 years later, still rocking it. Next person I need to thank is my husband of 40 years, Sid Sato. There he is over there. He married me despite my love affair for Chatham. Thank you, Sid, for not being jealous, for allowing me to be polyamorous. I grew up in the projects in segregated Virginia with my mother, a great-grandmother whom I called Granny, my 2 older brothers, and a younger sister. We lived under the same roof, sharing 1 bathroom. Timing was everything, but Granny always got to go first. With no formal education and racism, sexism at the peak, my Granny was a strong, proud woman who worked her whole life cleaning the homes of her white employers. When I was told that medical school was too hard for a woman and there was no place in medicine for a black woman, I would think about what my Granny said. Pay them no never mind. Pay them no never mind. Thanks for those words, Granny. In August of 1958, tragedy hit my family. I was 6 and my sister Beverly was 2. While waiting to cross the street, a car came up on the curb, hit and killed my sister right in front of me. My family coped by accepting she was gone and moved on. My mother even had another child. But I struggled with moving on. I didn't understand the finality of death. I became angry, apathetic little girl. I got into a lot of fights. I spent a lot of time in the principal's office. I was headed down a path of self-destruction until I was 9. A new TV medical drama came on and gave me direction. It was called Ben Casey. Now, Ben Casey was the 1960s version of Dr. McDreamy, okay? Handsome guy. Ben Casey healed the sick, showed compassion, and made a difference in the lives of others. I decided I wanted to be him. Well, not white or male, but I wanted to become a doctor. So thank you, Ben Casey, and thank you, my dear sister Beverly. You're always with me, and in your short life, you made a big difference in my life, showing me the way. You gave me purpose. So how was I going to follow this dream? A good education was the key. School integration came to Virginia 12 years after the 1954 Supreme Court decision of Brown versus Board of Education, declaring that separate but equal schools were unconstitutional. Virginia closed schools to prevent them from being integrated. There were protests. In 1967, despite all that, I transferred from my neighborhood high school to Craddock, the white high school. It was a freedom of choice program, so you had to request to be transferred. My mother didn't want me to go, She said, "Lynette, those people might hurt you." My own neighborhood didn't want me to go. "Lynette, don't you dare go there. You know you ain't smart as those white kids. They're just gonna send you back." Paying all of them no never mind, I forged my mother's name on the transfer papers. But when she found out, she didn't stop me. So the first day that I walked through the white neighborhood to get to the new school, people taunted me from their porches. They threw things at me. "Colored girl, you don't belong here. Go back to Africa." And those were the nicer things that they said to me. I did wonder how I could go back to some place I'd never been. But I paid them no never mind. I made it to the school, I worked hard, I excelled, I was a straight A student, I was in the National Honor Society, but then it came time for me to apply to colleges. And I discovered that my senior guidance counselor was a door closer. I walk in and I say, "I need some help with my college applications." "Lynette, why on earth do you want to go to college?" "Well, I'd like to go to college because I would like to someday become a doctor, and I know I need to go to college before I go to medical school." College, medical school, a doctor? Now, you might be able to get in one of those Negro colleges, but no medical school is going to take a colored girl. Slam. She would not help me. Walking home from the bus stop that day, I thought of my granny. And I finally said, "Girl, stop your crying. Pay her no never mind." That very same day, Peggy called my mother and offered the bus ticket. Peggy and Chatham gave me the key to open that door closed by someone who was supposed to give me support. Next, I'd like to thank Dr. Chilton Knutson, who's not here, but she was my biology teacher and mentor before she became a Right Reverend Bishop. She was the one that got me my tutorial at Pitt, where I worked on sickle cell anemia, and that tutorial helped me get into medical school. Thanks to Dr. Mark Paulson, organic chemistry teacher, I overslept one day. Now, you know, Chatham has a small class size, right? So I overslept. I didn't show up for class. He sent out a search party for me. He really cared. Thanks to Dr. Frances Eldridge, English professor. Vivian, where are you, Vivian? She was talking about the liberal arts. Well, when you're a science major, it's hard for you to be liberal artsy. And Frances Eldridge knew that. So what did she do? She made us a course, English for the science major. And we met on Tuesday and Thursday nights at her home. Isn't that awesome? Thank you to Robert and Ann Wells. They were my Pittsburgh family while I was here. I could not afford to go home, so I bummed places to go during the summer, and they technically adopted me. And we've been lifelong friends. She was godparent to my children, and she's in her 90s now, and I still visit her in Kennett Square. Thanks to President Eddie. I wanted him to give me a couch, but what happened is that during the summer after I graduated, I was accepted to medical school, but I had a job in Pittsburgh, and I needed some furniture. Now, who can do this now? And take heart here, Dr. Feingo. I walked up to Greg House, and I knocked on the door, and Mrs. Eddie answered, and I said, "I need to speak to President Eddie. I've got something I need to ask him." They let me in, believe it or not. We sat in the living room area there, and I said, "You've got all this furniture here for the summer. You're not using it. I could use it, and a couch, and I promised to bring it back." He didn't give me the couch, but he gave me a desk, a bed, a dresser, a mattress. Who does that? And I used it during the summer, and then when the summer was over, I gave it back. So thank you, President Eddy. To my class of 1974, my sincere thanks to all of you for being a part of my journey. You were, and still are, a remarkable group of women. You are door openers. And if asked, who besides Rachel Carson? Just look at our class. Doctors, lawyers, judges, scientists, entrepreneurs, teachers, philanthropists, CEOs, professors, a BFF for Mr. Rogers, and even a cousin to movie stars. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. So I challenge all the alumni today to feel the impact of what being at Chatham did for you. Besides giving me my career, I was introduced to lox and bagels, pizza, falling water, toe dabbling day, and much, much more. And some of you may remember Mary at Ficus. We had our own cook people. Yes. My 4 years at Chatham truly shaped me into the woman I am today, and I felt the desire to give back early on. My first year of medical school, I gave $10 to the annual fund. By the time I was a medical intern, making a whopping $10,000 a year, I had increased my amount to $60. And as my medical practice took off, so did my giving back. You see, there would be no Lynette D. Charity, MD, without Chatham. And with our help as mentors to future graduates and contributors to the annual fund, we will all be door openers that will make more distinguished alumni who will keep our beloved school moving forward. Maybe we will have the first female president as a graduate from Chatham College. We already have street cred. The mayor of DC is a Chatham graduate, okay? So I ask you, a little sacrifice here. Give up those 2 Starbucks Grande coffees a day for like a month. You know, locate some loose change in your couch. It can be dollar bills too. Visit the college, mentor a student, stay involved. Wherever I travel, I wear my Chatham swag. I was just in London and Ireland, and I wore my Chatham sweatshirt there. When my son was young, he wanted to attend Chatham, but at the time he couldn't. So he went to Whitman College in Walla Walla, Washington, because it had a similar campus feel. My daughter graduated from Chatham in 2006, and now so can my grandson, class of 2040. Each time I visit here, I come down Fifth Avenue, and when I make that right turn on Woodland Road, I feel I'm coming home. And finally, to my mother, who died last year, Anne Elizabeth Washington Charity. She graduated from high school at the age of 16 and studied music in college for 2 years. She married at the age of 18 and had 5 children by the time she was 30. My father died of cancer at the age of 50 when my mom was 46. She learned how to drive. She bought herself a car. She went back to school. She opened a personal checking account. She got a job in the social work field and showed me the woman she was meant to be. I know she's looking down upon this occasion, saying what she used to say to people all the time. That's my daughter. I taught her everything she knows. I'm so proud of her. Thank you, Mom. And thank you again, Chatham.
Well, I don't know how I'm supposed to talk after that. I'm all choked up. Thank you for sharing your inspiring story with us. You are so deserving of this year's Distinguished Alumna Award. Your classmate and former roommate, Kathy Cusack Wilson, would like to present you with a gift. Engraved Chatham purple wine glasses.
Is that what they are?
Yes. President Feingold, I ask you now to join me on stage to present the remaining awards to each of our awardees. All right. Okay. 22 years ago, Chatham initiated the Cornerstone Awards to recognize achievements and leadership of Chatham undergraduate alumni who demonstrate the essence of a Chatham education. First, this morning we honor our Cornerstone Award for Art recipient, Dorothy Cohn Fox, class of 1964. Unfortunately, Dorothy was unable to travel to Pittsburgh from Connecticut, but we recognize her lifetime achievement in art. She now paints primarily with acrylic on both paper and canvas, reaching for new expressions of color and design. Congratulations, Dorothy. Our next awardee is the Cornerstone Award for Environmental Stewardship, presented to Jolene Hereditario Chinchilli. Did I say that right? No, I did not. Chinchilli, though I got that one right. Class of 1974. I gotta switch the slide. After earning a master's degree in environmental science and engineering and public health at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Jolene began her professional career at the EPA in Washington, D.C., where she managed the review and regulation of pesticides. Now she serves as vice chairperson of the board of directors of the Pennsylvania Environmental Council, a statewide nonprofit conservation organization. Join me in welcoming Jolene to the stage.
Well, good morning. It's really a pleasure to be back at Chatham after all these years. I apologize for my voice, little fall allergies, so I beg your indulgence for that. First of all, I want to thank Chatham for this award. I am truly honored and very, very grateful. But I wanted to also take this opportunity to thank Chatham for the many other things that I received from being here for 4 years. And I especially wanted to mention 3 things that I only learned to fully appreciate after I left Chatham. I loved my 4 years here. It was wonderful. But there are things that you learn later, and you look back and you say, I could do this because of what I experienced at Chatham. So the first thing I want to mention is that I got a very, very strong academic background here. When I came to school here, I knew this was a good school. I knew there was a good science program here. But until I got to graduate school, I really didn't know how strong an academic foundation I had gotten at Chatham. Excuse me. I was really very, very prepared because here we had small classes and direct interaction with faculty and lots of hands-on work and challenging courses. And through the tutorial process here and under the skillful direction and inspiration of Mary Costalis, when I got to graduate school, I knew how to conduct independent research. I knew how to organize and write and defend a thesis because I had done it here already. And so I was not only very prepared, I was also, I think, had a little step up on some of the other students there when I entered. And that was fortunate because the second thing that Chatham gave me that I didn't fully appreciate when I was here was that it gave me confidence. I went from this small women's liberal arts college in Pittsburgh to a very large, co-ed, very impersonal research university in the South. And I have to tell you that was culture shock on many levels. But the biggest thing I had to face there was that I went into a department, environmental science and engineering, that was, at the time, very male-dominated. There were approximately 100 graduate students in that program. I was one of only 3 women. There were no women faculty. There were no women mentors. There were no women role models. And there were faculty members there who had no reticence about telling you their opinion that they didn't think women belonged in that program, that we couldn't handle the challenging academic material, we wouldn't want to get our hands dirty doing field work, and they basically told us that they didn't feel that, well, they did feel that funding female graduate students in that program was a waste of money because they didn't go on to careers, they got married, they had children, and they followed their husband around. And I'm a pretty persistent person, and my husband would probably say stubborn. But I honestly believe that I would not have been able to navigate that environment successfully if I hadn't had the experience here at Chatham. It was supportive and encouraging. It gave me high expectations and lots of confidence as a person, as a student, as a woman, and a really abiding belief that women could be successful in any field or any walk of life that they choose to be. And I believe that not just because they told us that here, but because of what I saw around me every day. I saw my classmates and faculty and administrators and everyone here who really believed that and infused that into the students here. The third thing I want to mention is, and we've heard that a lot, we've heard this next issue a lot over this weekend, but I think it bears repeating. Chatham gave me, I was a science student here, but I also took music courses in art history and languages, and I actually think I had more credits in Russian than I did in chemistry. But and that was good. I was interested in that. But Chatham gave me an appreciation and a perspective of a liberal arts education. And that is something I think I certainly didn't think about very much at the time. I just enjoyed the classes. But then when I went to graduate school, that was certainly very heavily hard science. There was one course in environmental law that I took, but everything else was very hardcore science and research. So when I finished graduate school and I went to EPA, I was very idealistic. I was armed with all this science. I had these science degrees, and I was going to go and I was going to save the earth with science. And I quickly learned that that's not exactly how it works. and that environmental issues and environmental policy and environmental decision-making isn't just scientific. That's very, very important and should form the core and the basis for those things, but it's not enough. Science and the facts are not enough. And these issues they're economic, they're social, they're behavioral, they're psychological, they're legal, they're economic. Did I repeat that? They are philosophical and ethical, and sometimes, unfortunately, very, very political. And so you have to take those things, all of those things, into account. And Chatham let me see and come at these issues not only through the lens of science, but also through the lens of a liberal arts education. And that made me a better scientist, it made me a better administrator, it made me a better regulator, it made me a better policy analyst, and it certainly made me a better advocate for environmental stewardship throughout my career. So I thank Chatham for that as well. So before they get the hook out on me, the other thing I wanted to mention is that Chatham emphasized good communication skills, as my mouth dries up here. But even in the sciences, I don't know how many of you might remember Dr. Hess, but I had him for some advanced biology courses, and he would give us papers to do. And Dr. Hess, he would deduct points for every typo, every misspelling, every grammatical error, and take off for not really structuring your paper very well and not making your arguments very well. And some students didn't like that. They felt very much like, their argument was, this is a science course, it's not an English class. But the lesson he was giving us there was that good writing skills, good communication skills are extremely important no matter what field you are in. You have to be able to convey your ideas effectively, your findings, your arguments, in any field, and certainly in science. And so that allows me to then segue into Rachel Carson, because I cannot stand here and accept an award in environmental stewardship from Chatham College on its 150th anniversary and not mention Rachel Carson. My mouth is, excuse me. I won't be much longer, I promise. But Rachel Carson wasn't just a good scientist. She was an excellent communicator, as you all know. Her writing not only informed, but it inspired and it motivated and it kick-started a movement. She was able to combine her science and her liberal arts background and show people those connections between a healthy environment, a healthy body, and a healthy humanity. And so I often look at her and think she is the epitome of a Chatham education. So again, I thank Chatham for that. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. It's allergy medicine. Dries your mouth out. So again, I just want to thank Chatham for this wonderful award. I want to congratulate the other awardees. I'm very grateful for this award, and I'm very proud to have received it, and I am proud of all of us here and this wonderful college. University now, excuse me. So thank you very much.
Congratulations, Jolene. Our next awardee is the Cornerstone Award for Nonprofit Management, presented to Rebecca Leedy Abrams, class of 1994. Volunteering in her community began at an early age for Rebecca as a brownie with her local Girl Scout troop. Somehow I think there's a story behind that, so not shocking that her career has since focused on helping individuals, specifically women, reach self-sufficiency through agencies like the Lancaster Shelter for Abused Women, the Greater Pittsburgh Food Bank, the Squirrel Hill Community Food Pantry, and the National Council of Jewish Women's Center for Women. Join me in welcoming Rebecca to the stage.
Hello, and thank you so much. I really don't have a lot to say, except that Chatham has been a part of my life since I was 12. My dad started to work here as an electrician, and I had the opportunity to come to Chatham basically tuition-free, just room and board. And I said, why do I want to do that? I want to go somewhere bigger. And my parents were like, well, you can go somewhere bigger, you can pay for it, or we'll send you to Chatham. And so here I was. And it turned out to be the best decision I ever made in my life. And I made the best friends, I had a great education, I went on to a top 10 grad school, had a fantastic career where I was able to help thousands of families and children and women and be able to work with so many wonderful volunteers. And I think the thing that I'm most proud of is that my oldest daughter, Sadie, who's sitting there in the second row, is a junior here at Chatham now. She's studying exercise science, and she's going to go on for her doctorate in physical therapy. I hear interviews are soon, so if Dr. Downey's in the room, yeah, count her in. Okay. But it's been a really great opportunity to work in my community here in Pittsburgh for all these years, and I have Chatham to thank for the start of that, so thank you so much.
Congratulations, Beck. Our final award this morning is the William Trimble Beatty Award, which honors the contributions of volunteers to Chatham and is named for Reverend Beatty, who helped to establish the charter and raise funds for the university's founding in 1869. As the first volunteer for the university, Reverend Beatty embodied the spirit of volunteerism so precious to the Chatham community. I am pleased to announce that the 2019 recipient of the William Trimble Beatty Award is 1984 alumna Annette Calgaro. There's a little bit more background information, so that's all right. Neither do I. So, Annette previously served on the Chatham University Alumni Association Board and is currently the treasurer of the Chatham University Board of Trustees, where she also serves on the Audit and University Capacity Committees. Annette co-chaired the successful $100 million campaign for Chatham, which raised more than $101 million when it was completed in 2018. On behalf of the Alumni Association, thank you for your years of service.
Thank you. Obviously, I don't really follow instructions very well. But thank you for the award, and certainly congratulations to all of my fellow award winners tonight. I tried to think about when I started to volunteer for Chatham, because I was never really a joiner or an early adapter. And it all comes back to I came to a reunion. And I was at the Bloody Mary brunch, and somebody said, hey, we need a committee, we're doing a panel for career services. Would you be interested in participating? And the Bloody Mary said, yes, I'd love to do it. So I was on the committee, I was on a panel, and it was really rewarding. Like Lynette said, you turn onto the street, you get here, and it just feels wonderful. And I was surprised at how much I really enjoyed the students. I mean, they were amazing that day, and the students are still amazing through everything I've experienced here at Chatham. As they mentioned, I did a few more. They lured me in very slowly, but I was on the alumni board, and I want to thank Gretchen Hart, who's here today, for her never-ending patience in dealing with me as a member of the alumni board, and certainly on the board of trustees. It's been certainly an interesting time with, let's see, we went co-ed, we found a new president, and then the Capitol campaign. In these times when all we talk about is divisiveness and we're all so unconnected, volunteering is just so important. I mean, no one has time, but you can find time, and there's so many wonderful organizations out there that will make time for you to volunteer. So I think my final message today, I mean, I've gotten so much more from this experience than I ever gave to Chatham, and I think it really behooves us all to look around us and everybody pitch in and try to help. Thanks so much.
Thank you and congratulations, Annette. Congratulations again to all of our 2019 award recipients. Okay, so while we get set up for the President's retrospective, I am delighted to welcome Robin Malloy Goldsby, class of 1979, to the stage. She has traveled all the way from Germany and will play a brief piano interlude. Be sure to join her in the Welcome Room of James Laughlin Music Center at 3:30 p.m. today for an exclusive concert.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be back at Chatham. I want to congratulate the awardees. You inspired me completely. Dr. Charity, that's one of the most beautiful speeches I've heard in a long time. Thank you for that. I was launched by Chatham in 1979 into my professional career as a composer and pianist. And the piece I've chosen to play for you today is one of my recent compositions. It's called the Three Rivers Suite. It's not the three rivers that you might think. They're the three rivers of my life. And it's a three-movement piece, short. First movement is called Allegheny. The second movement is Hudson, for the years that I lived in New York City. And the third movement is called Rhine. I live in Germany now. So here we go, Three Rivers Suite.
Cheers again. Thank you, Robin. She's off to set her 3:30 performance. She hopes to see you all there. And thank you to Leah Thompson, a wonderful MC of our award ceremony. Thank you, Leah. We're going to switch this stage up. Facilities, piano move. Thank you. That's not necessary, Lynette. You're special. You just sit right there. Thank you. Can we give a round of applause to our facilities team all weekend long? Thank you. Okay. It is my immense pleasure to introduce our moderator for today's Chatham History Retrospective, Bill Flanagan. Mr. Flanagan is an experienced broadcast journalist who has told the story of Pittsburgh's economic transformation for more than 35 years. He serves as host and producer of Our Region's Business, a weekly business public affairs program now in its 16th year on WPXI TV in Pittsburgh, and is the chief corporate relations officer for the Allegheny Conference. Mr. Flanagan is also a proud father of Chatham University 2015 alumna Mara Flanagan, who sadly passed away from cancer in 2016. I had the pleasure of serving as Mara's work-study supervisor during her junior and senior years when she worked tirelessly and creatively for our office. Mara loved glitter, red lipstick, and above all, her family. Please join me in welcoming Bill to the stage. Joining Bill on stage, Dr. Alberta Arthurs, who served Chatham College as president from 1977 to 1982. Ms. Louise Royster Brown, class of 1967, who served Chatham College as interim president from 1990 to 1991 and has served on the board of trustees since 1975. Dr. Esther Barazzoni, who served as Chatham University's president from 1992 to 2016. And finally, our current president, Dr. David Feingold, who joined Chatham in 2016. Take it away, Bill.
All right. Thank you very much. It is great to be here with everybody today and back on campus. This was a very special place to my daughter and our family, and I'm really pleased to be able to participate in a little bit of reflection, but also a look forward and kind of where the university is today and where it's going to be going and the role that each of these individuals has played. You know, 1869, when Chatham was founded, was actually a pretty big year in Pittsburgh in general. That was the year a 24-year-old George Westinghouse showed up with a better idea to stop trains. It was the year 25-year-old H.J. Heinz came down the Allegheny from Sharpsburg to start a little food company. It was the year Judge Mellon decided to get into the banking business and formed the Mellon Bank. And of course, it was the year that Chatham's predecessor college was founded. So I don't know, I've always said if you want to pick a year and a place for the birth of the modern world, 1869 in Pittsburgh was probably as good as any. And Chatham has played a very important part in that evolution over these years. So we're going to talk a little history. We'll find out about the tenure of each of our presidents and kind of what happened during their time, and a little bit how Chatham has kind of shaped Pittsburgh and has been shaped not just by this community, but by the greater forces that have been swirling over the past 150 years. We don't have all those presidents here with us, but we can go at least back to the 1970s. And Dr. Others, I thought I'd start with you. When you came on board, it was a really interesting time in Pittsburgh. It was the middle of what's now kind of known as Renaissance 2. And yeah, kind of your thoughts. What did you find here? What attracted you to Chatham? And what, yeah, let me grab a mic there. Yeah, you each get your own mic, so why don't you take that one? Yeah, and yeah, your reflection on what it was like here when you came and why you came in the first place.
Well, that's a lot to talk about, and I'll be speedy. Because we have a lot to talk about. But I was here from 1977 to 1982. It was really a brief period, too brief. I left reluctantly, and my family was angry at me for leaving Chatham. We loved the city, we loved the college. We had a wonderful 5 years. But looking at it historically, which I think is a wonderful way to look at it, colleges and universities at their best reflect, think through, and work on the issues of their time. In 1977 was the year when tens of thousands of women marched together in Houston, Texas, to finish or to begin the next phase of what they thought was a movement. And actually in 1970, after a lot of work and more to come, Kate Millett, whose name was very famous at the time, said, "We are a movement now." When I came here, the movement was at a place where women's colleges and universities in general, but women's colleges were a particularly important part of that movement. And many of them were getting women presidents for the first time or after a long time.
That would surprise a lot of people.
Oh,
Women's colleges didn't have women presidents?
No, this college had been run by men for 42 of those 150 years before I got here. There had been from the early days a few women, many of them, sure, brave, stalwart women. Blue stockings in the very early days is what they would have called them. But by the time I got here, it was clear a woman had to run a women's college. And everybody preferred a woman with a husband and children and a full life, interestingly enough. And I came here with all of that. I ran a college. I raised money. I ran a household, and I raised kids. That's what went on in those days as well. So it was a fierce and wonderful, wonderful time. It was a time when we could take our women here and fight for women elsewhere to engage with a big corporate banking city, the major foundation city in the country next to New York in those days. It was a brilliant, beautiful time in Pittsburgh history, as you mentioned, and it was a great time for women. It was a great time for this college.
Yeah, it's interesting. I tell some of the younger women that I work with, who are now in their 40s, I guess, but by my standards, they're now younger. What it was like in the 1970s to listen to Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show when he made fun of the term Ms. I've never forgotten that act, and he riffed on it for 5 minutes. What a ridiculous idea it was that women would want to be called Ms. instead of Miss or Mrs. It's not that long ago. It's only about 40, 45 years, and the world has changed dramatically in that respect.
Yes, it has, but it was in 1977, a time when we were helping young women find internships in major corporations in this city, when women were combining their curriculum choices so that they would be prepared to go out into a job. It was a time when a lot of older women were returning to complete their degrees. This place was full of young women and full of women who were aspiring again after an interlude away from college. It was an extremely exciting time. I just met a lot of the women who were kids then at the brunch, and it was a thrill to see them. They are now retiring.
Yeah, it was interesting. I know I'm kind of seeing that myself more and more of the people I interact with. I knew when they were that young. It's interesting, though. You're there in the late 70s and early 80s for that 5-year period. It was an exciting time here in Pittsburgh. But, like Pittsburgh itself, Chatham kind of hit the rocks a little bit during the 1980s. And Louise, that's when you came in. Actually, you didn't just come into the picture because you've been a trustee since, 1975, something like that. So you've been here for a remarkable journey over the past 45 years or so.
Alberta and I knew each other. That's right. I have been on the board since 1975, so I've kind of seen a lot. Skip forward. You mentioned you've been here only a short period of time. Well, I'm on the stage for being here for a year. So put that in perspective. I'm honored to sit between these two wonderful women educator presidents. But I just wanted to reflect a little bit when, during the 80s, the economy was not good. We had a recession, we had the stock market crash, and Chatham was not good. We were having serious problems and issues that had come up that really made Chatham think about its future in a big-time way. I was honored that the Board of Trustees asked me to step in during a time that was really not only crucial, but totally pivotal to the college. At that time, admissions and the student body count was at its very lowest. We had eliminated majors, we had eliminated programs. There was a tremendous need to dip into the endowment, and we lost our president, who resigned, and that's when I stepped in. Before I say anything else, I want to point to Jane Berger. I think you're here somewhere.
There she is in the back. Jane.
Who really, without her leadership and support, we would not have gotten through this. She became my sister, my mentor, my leader in all of this. And that, I can't thank Jane enough for that, and really the whole board. So what happened in 1990 was that the board asked me to step in, given the fact that our president left, and it was, the worst problem, I think, was morale. The faculty had come to me as chairman, I was chairman of the board at the time, and said, we can't go on this way. And that, of course, with the faculty morale is bad, then that filters all the way down to the students, to the administrators, the staff. And so we had to think of a way to, what are we going to do next? And I think it was a really, not only a very sad time, but an exciting time. What we did was formed a consortium of about 30, 40 people representing trustees, faculty, alums, students, friends of the college, and we intensively met for long weekends twice a year to come up with a strategic plan, which we didn't have before, of where the college could possibly go. And that process in itself was a bonding process to help us, and we had very, very negative alums that came from afar to join in this process, and we all knew that the issue was not, should we go co-ed or not? It was much more serious than that. We had institutional failure, and we had to get back on track and decide whether there was a chance for us to succeed and to move forward or not. That whole process, which was led by a trustee, Todd Simons, whose son is now a trustee at the college, and with the help of a consultant who was terrific, made us really think about what the issues were, what our strengths were, what our weaknesses were, and how we could build on those strengths and overcome the weaknesses. And we came up with a plan, which we weren't sure was really going to work or not, but it was to take some money out of the endowment, even more, and build on the liberal arts program that was so strong here at Chatham and was our mission, but to focus on environmental programs and issues, global and international issues, and women's leadership. And voila, during that year, we also found Esther, and we're delighted, not only delighted, but it was really our savior to come in and not only implement those programs, but to innovate new ways in new times of how Chatham could better prepare women and ultimately men and women to become productive citizens of our community. So it was an exciting time for me. It was certainly a learning, and it was an honor for me to be a part of that.
So Esther, yeah. I mean, I guess you're a woman who loves a challenge. So when this opportunity arose, what was it that convinced you that this role was going to be for you and that you should come and take on the challenge that Louise was throwing your way, Louise and the board?
Oh, well, thank you for that. First, let me say, it's just a thrill to be here and to see all of you. And the ultimate answer to that question is all these people in the audience, because I have indeed been asked many times, and why did you take that job? But the reason really was everything Louise just said. How many incoming presidents have a board that has self-examined its role in the institution reaching where it was? There was not, oh, it's the this or the that in the external environment, because there are always challenges in the external environment. It was, we have not paid attention to our governance in certain ways. There are things we need to do. I was very clearly given the charge to try to keep the college single sex, which we managed for another 21 years. It was a very slow decision to come, and we never lost the mission to women, even when we finally decided we had to go co-educational after the crisis of '08. And so it was a complex of Louise's leadership, which I asked people and heard that the oil had been poured successfully on the waters, that it was an optimistic community, it was a community ready for some change. The board had indicated its own readiness. I remember asking the board in my final interview, okay, I think I know which limbs to crawl out on. Will you hold it up, my branch? And they assured me that indeed we were all in this together. It was a very large search committee. I think there were over 30 people, and it gave me a good cross-section of the community. And I was so impressed with the alumni, even though some of them were deeply worried about me and my background. It was a positive sign of how much people cared for this institution. And the community, Bill, people around the community whom I also spoke with, cared about Chatham, because Chatham, as you pointed out, is so much a piece of the history of Pittsburgh. Yeah. So that I felt great optimism, which was certainly borne out by how people behaved.
You made a big bet on graduate education, right. Masters and above. You know, why? How big a risk was it, and why did you think it was critical to do that?
Well, the statistics were out there, even at that point, that it might have been 4% of the young women who wanted to go to a women's college. It later sank to 2%. So it was clear that we had to have both continuity and change. And so the initial goal, I always called it dual vision, was to honor and reinforce the tradition and all that was good, but also to achieve some change. We needed some new markets. We needed some additional sources of revenue. You simply couldn't market harder. And also we had to, as Louise pointed out, modify our offerings. And so graduate education presented an opportunity for us to do both. What graduate education did was let us preserve the undergraduate liberal arts focus, but at the graduate level to offer applied programs, because students were becoming more and more interested. Gee, education was getting more costly. They needed to have jobs when they got out. So we studied the alumni very carefully to say, where did they go? What did they study? What did they do after they left Chatham? And many became professionals, of course, of one kind or another. So we created these graduate programs in high demand, high quality fields, primarily initially the health sciences. We started physical and occupational therapy in 9 months and recruited a class, which is unheard of. So Chatham became known for speed in implementing change. I mean, they became to be a joke. I'm sure you'll hear Bill Lenz talk about it tomorrow. Chatham time. When we decided to do something, we did it. And the board was committed to investing, as Louise said, through deficit spending. So we reinforced the tradition in this dual vision. We started athletics because the only time athletics had been considered before was when they thought about going coeducational. But no, young women wanted to do sports. So we worked even more intensely on women's leadership, even more than had been done. So we reinforced what was there and tried to strengthen it. We thought that women's education was an Olympic training village for women. So we rejected the idea of ivory tower and really changed the tone of recruitment to women's education, and at the same time added these early graduate programs, which gave us another market, if you'll excuse that kind of language. But what was really new was not just the graduate programs, but we were one of the first in the country to do accelerated time to dual degrees. And the accelerated time cut a year out of the time to a bachelor's and a master's degree, and it helped students with the growing cost of higher education, which was coming to be recognized more and more. So it gave us a lot of opportunities to honor what was there, to add what women wanted and needed, both at the undergraduate and the graduate level. So I hope I wasn't too long with that, but it was a very important way for us to honor where we had been and where women wanted to go as women's needs and interests changed since what they were in 1869 or 1964.
And David, obviously, that's when you kind of come into the picture, not just with all of that change, but ultimately with the decision by the board to go to bring guys on. Actually, guys have been on the campus since you started the whole graduate school thing.
That's
so
correct.
It wasn't a great revelation, I suppose, since 1994. But nonetheless, a lot of this groundwork had been laid. So you're looking at this as the guy who's evaluating whether to become the president of a now coeducational Chatham. What played into your decision, and why did you want to join this community and lead it?
Sure. Thank you, Bill, and thank you all for what you've done for Chatham and for coming back to join us for this amazing weekend. To be honest, when I was first approached about the opportunity at Chatham, having been at Rutgers for the previous decade, I was a little skeptical. I'd been at Rutgers when Douglas had gone co-ed. I learned of Esther's amazing legacy of leadership for 24 years, and I thought, just at this time in your history, you're really thinking about hiring a guy to lead this institution. And so I told the search firm, sure, put my name in, but I figured it wouldn't go anywhere with it. But the more I learned about the opportunity and the attitude of Chatham, its core values around diversity and inclusion, and the amazing legacy that Esther had left over that 24 years and all that had preceded it, the more excited I got, because I had spent my career divided between very large research universities like Rutgers and USC, and had been in small places like the Oxford colleges, like the Claremont colleges, and had always had a huge fondness and thought that if I were to lead an institution, I'd want it to be in a place where I could meet one-on-one with every faculty member, where I could be part of the interaction and the daily life on campus, not many, many layers removed. And what I love about Chatham is the fact that it has both. It has that complexity of undergraduate and graduate degrees. It now has 3 amazing campuses. It does things online as well as face-to-face. So it has all the complexity you had at a Rutgers or USC, but on a scale where you can really have a direct personal impact. And so it was that history of innovation, of transformation, of constantly thinking about what comes next that I thought was so appealing. And then as we've gotten here, seeing the amazing fondness and deepness with which it's connected with Pittsburgh has been a wonderful new learning experience and asset for us.
You mentioned that history of innovation and risk-taking. I guess some of it born by necessity, depending on the external dynamics. Some of it seemed to be baked into the culture going all the way back to when you were here, Alberta. I mean, this whole idea of beginning to reinvent the way women were educated in the midst of the women's movement in the 1970s. And what were the gambles you were taking in those days to move the college forward?
Well, I think the reach, as I suggested before, for women in the movement generally, and certainly for Chatham women at the time, was to break into the places from which they had been so long prohibited. It's kind of hard to realize now what a different world it was, both in terms of what Pittsburgh was like and the finances, the economy of the country, in fact, and also in terms of how many of our citizens were not full citizens, professionally, even personally. So Chatham was really on the cusp of that, and I think early efforts at true diversity in this place as well. So it was a time when we had to move to address, in a way, the ambitions women had for themselves. It was a huge positive motivator, as a matter of fact, to come here and find women who were poised to make a difference in the world, and at the time, frankly, to be a woman trying to lead women on that route. Maybe in some ways a simpler time. The issues were pretty clear. Jimmy Carter was president. New York City had a big blackout. The teams in this town were winning everything. It was
4 Super Bowls, 2 World Series, the 70s, yeah.
It was an amazing time, and women were poised. Actually, as I said to Esther when we were together last night, I was desperate to bring graduate programs here because, same old theme, women needed them. So, and they needed to be aimed at where they were coming from and where they hoped to go. The faculty wasn't ready for it, which was really
How so? Why was there resistance among the faculty?
I think in a way it was a kind of truth on their part. The kinds of programs we needed, and which Esther eventually put in place, were not directly related to their areas of expertise, and they were cautious about that. I see some people nodding. It was a wonderful faculty. They were devoted to what they did. But they didn't think they were credentialed to offer graduate courses. So we never even had an open conversation about what it would be like. That came historically at the right time. But there was no question that there were a lot of needs to be met as we marched forward to make a more equal society, which was really what we were trying to do at Chatham at the time.
Yeah, Louise, I wonder too, during your time here, was that when really the understanding of the light came on, that just a focus on sort of undergraduate liberal arts college was not going to be sufficient in the future? How did that play?
I think so. And as I mentioned, it wasn't just, we'll admit men and everything will be just fine. Well, first of all, would they come? Secondly, we didn't have the facilities or programs, and that was not the answer. The answer was we did have to look forward. We did have to reinvent ourselves. And I think I'd just like to point out that since I am the longest tenured person on the board, I want everyone to understand that Chatham has always had a fantastic board, excluding me. But as Esther mentioned, Chatham time is a real thing. Have an idea, research it, know if it works, and then move forward quickly. It's always been a board that has seen that Chatham is an integral part of Pittsburgh. These men and women on the board who are Pittsburghers have legacies of Chatham. And I think the board and its willingness to change, to move forward, to take risks, is really what has brought us to a successful today.
For me, I couldn't have survived without Jane Berger and Sigel Falk.
Yeah.
My initial board chairs.
That's true.
It was so important. And I say, why don't we have all the trustees who are here stand
Yeah, I
up? There are quite a few in the room. It's a remarkable, remarkable
All
crowd.
right, trustees, please stand up.
Yes, anyone who's been a trustee or is a trustee. Yeah, great. Presidents live and die by their boards. And I wanted to say just one thing about your question, why wasn't graduate education accepted? You know, part of that's just baked into the history of higher ed. Only Bryn Mawr started copying the German model at its very beginning, creating graduate programs. But the ideology of liberal arts education, particularly through the late 19th century and then into the 20th, began to see these things as quite separate. And you grew up this industry of graduate versus undergraduate, and particularly at liberal arts institutions. And it was bad for liberal arts institutions, but especially women's colleges did not do graduate education.
That's fascinating. I hadn't realized that before we had our discussion about this to begin with. One thing, I know we've handed out cards to everybody as they came in to write down questions. So, you know, if any of you do that and you want to write down the question and hold it out, I think there'll be somebody working the aisles to pick them up and bring the cards up. Oh, and here come some cards to start with. But feel free to do that and send them up as we continue the conversation for the next half hour or so, and I will work them in. One thing I do want to talk about is the whole sustainability push. David, you mentioned that. Now, 3 campuses. There was initially the graduate school campus over on Penn Avenue, and now Eden Hall. I mean, Rachel Carson had been part of the community as an alumni for decades, but it seemed like Esther was the one who really decided to play that card and make it part of the core.
Well, you know, I started out by saying colleges and universities at their best respond to the world in which they live. And that's an issue that's appropriate. It was a ready issue. It was what's in the world. It's what's needed. It's the advance that was appropriate for Chatham, along with other things, at the time that happened. It's really quite remarkable, because I think David has a wonderful mission, because he's in the situation I think we're facing nationwide right now, right here at Chatham, which is bringing all the disparate groups together, finding all the people who have freedom and are still searching for it, and putting them on one country as one nation. So the more people that we spring free, that we educate to deal with the world around them, the more they need to know how to be together. And in a sense, co-education here presents us, from my point of view, David, that kind of challenge. We need to be less separate and more united.
Speaks to the ecology message in the broadest sense. Esther, but sort of the strategic decision you made to really bake this in now into the future thinking strategy of the university.
Well, as Louise said, there were certain themes that were laid out, and I was blessed to have had a couple of things begun already. And I see Mary Costellas in the background, I would acknowledge, as the first director of the Rachel Carson Institute. Mary, raise your hand. People see you here. Thank you. But that, so there were beginnings and good beginnings, but I think the commitment that I made and that the board made was that Chatham had to be worth saving. That we weren't just going to throw in programs, any programs. I could have put a fashion design major in if I had survived, and we could have added a lot of students. But what we did had to be authentic to the institution. And so we took initiatives that had already begun, such as the Rachel Carson Institute, and said, this has to be real, it has to be quality, it has to be significant, anything that we do. And so we felt we had to be worthy of claiming Rachel. So we began to build many initiatives, and there were many things before the Eden Hall campus opportunity came along. Including, we were the first institution in the city to ban the use of plastic water bottles. And we put solar panels on.
You can see we have water glasses on the table even today. The culture continues.
We put solar heaters on top of, solar water heaters on top of the residence halls. We banned pesticides.
So you'd laid
campus.
this groundwork. It wasn't like somebody offered you a bunch of land and said, now become sustainable.
No, that's
you
right.
were already well down that path.
That's right, and that's
Yeah.
why the Eden Hall Foundation offered us that opportunity, was because they knew we were leaders in women's issues, and they knew that we had a sincere and growing commitment to sustainability.
David, and what's that meant as you looked at this university and its opportunity going forward for your predecessors to have had staked out that turf in terms of sustainability?
Well, I think it's been huge. Many of the people in the audience today were able to be out at the Eden Hall campus last night and saw what a unique and special place it is. And as Esther has said, it's not just about that campus. It's the fact that Chatham is one of the top-rated universities in the world for its comprehensive approach to thinking about sustainability in all aspects of what we do. And for me, it was a huge attraction of the job, because if you look at today's generation and the issues that are going to come, this is going to be the defining issue of their time, because of the legacy we've left them, unfortunately, in where the planet is heading. And so to be a university that's at the cutting edge of that, and to have an opportunity to make a real difference, to educate future generations of Rachel Carsons that combine the liberal arts with a true understanding of this. And it's something that we don't just want our majors to have. We ask all of our students to be informed citizens so that they can take on and see not just the challenges, but the opportunities that are out there for tackling so many of these issues we face in terms of energy, in terms of water, in terms of the food systems. And I think with the campus and with the legacy that we have, we're in a unique position. And frankly, that's desperately needed, not just from the society, but higher ed is a very competitive business these days. And so having something that's distinctive, that's a hallmark of the institution, that causes people to say, why would I want to pick Chatham versus the others? That's something that I think is really carrying us forward in a great way.
And I want to come back to that too, the dynamic of the declining pool of 18-year-olds, men and women. We'll get to that, David, as you think about the future in a minute. But first, we do have one of the questions from the audience is just a fact point. So we probably should drop it in right now, because we've talked a lot about the move to graduate education as well as co-education. So the question is, how many women and men make up Chatham today, and how many undergraduates and how many graduate students, kind of as a percentage of your total operation? David?
Well, it's a great question, and it's actually a story of dramatic change. So if you looked back the year before we went co-ed, our entering class of undergraduate students was under 150. So that was one of the reasons for that change. This fall, we admitted the largest class in Chatham's history, 420 undergraduate students.
400.
Quality is going up, graduation rates are going up. More women are at Chatham than when we were a single-sex institution, but we've added, and now we're all gender. And so the undergraduate programs have been growing. Before that point in time, we were over 70% graduate students and fewer than 30% undergraduate. Today, those lines have crossed. So now we are 55% undergraduate. We have nearly 2,400 students altogether, degree and non-degree seeking, and we're approaching our target, 10-year target for what we hoped was possible after going co-ed. We're likely to hit it next fall in terms of being at 1,200 full-time undergraduates.
Wow. That's remarkable. Yeah, I know my daughter, she was accepted at Carnegie Mellon and here, and look at other schools, including Bryn Mawr, and she really chose a women's college. That was very important to her, but she got here, and she loved it, and she loved the spirit of that, but she was also watching the enrollment around her. And she became more and more concerned about whether this institution was viable, and I think she was supportive ultimately of all the decisions that were made, but I think she was also proud to be part of the last graduating class of the when it was strictly a women's university. But it is remarkable, and I love the stat that there's actually now more women undergrads than there were before you started this journey, and that certainly is a great commitment to women's education despite the changes that you've made. It's really great to hear. Another question from the audience, which is kind of cool, and I'm going to ask each of you to answer this. What is one of the most important life lessons you learned as president of Chatham? How did it shape you as a person, as a professional, by virtue of your tenure here? Alberta? Who wants to answer it first? I will pick the one who's going to be on spot first. Whoever pops in here. Most important life lesson you learned, and then I want all four of you to answer, but who wants to? All right, Louise is going to take a shot. She only had the 1 year.
It reinforced my, I don't know if love's the right word, but commitment, appreciation of my student days at Chatham, of my participation on the board, and its place in Pittsburgh and in higher education. Even through the bad as well as the good, there is such a sense of family, community, support, which really shone through the year that I was here, that it made me even more appreciative and happy that I was a part of this college, university.
It's a tough question. I'd been in higher education for quite a long time before I came to Chatham, so I had an appreciation of the values of higher education and of women's colleges. I think the difference probably for me were the lessons in leadership, which is a challenge of its own. Whatever your values are, whether and how you can lead becomes an issue for a future, my future in my case. So I think it was the kind of perseverance and fortitude and humility and sense of purpose and other things that add up to the kind of leaders we need and can respect.
Esther, how about you? Life lessons learned during your 20-plus years here.
Yes, it truly is a difficult one. I think, as you know, we had a few rough times while I was here. One being my little boys and I walking up on the quad, and the students had hung sheets out of the dorms that said, "Keep faculty, fire Esther." And my kids were sort of going, "What's this?" we just moved here, and we're having to deal with some issues. So I think what I learned was, through things like that, the enormous importance of family. It was hugely important for me to go home and my kids wanted to play ping pong or something like that. So family was really important to have that kind of balance in your life. There's nothing like kids to put things in perspective. But I think Alberta's point about a sense of responsibility, passion, caring, I really always felt that this institution was larger than any part of it, any of us, and certainly it was a whole lot bigger than I was. And so I was really blessed with a wonderful leadership staff group that we would argue, we would work very hard with that plan we were given to try to think about how to work. The alumni leadership was strong, the board leadership was strong. The ability to turn to people, to communicate, to try very, very hard to have a core of communication and support in the team around you. And always, always know that you weren't doing it for yourself. At 150 years old, this institution is more important than any decision I made or tenure I had. And I always felt that way. And that, I think, was the key lesson in leadership, and to seek out allies. And I had a lot of opportunity to talk with people about how they disagreed with me. And it was always an important conversation. And at crucial times, we would work. For example, during a co-ed decision, during some of the deeply painful cuts that I still feel personally, we would work closely with faculty and with people in the community. So small group, commitment to what you're doing is bigger than you are. That's what I learned.
David, you've been here a relatively short time. You learned anything yet?
How's your tension now?
Learning a ton. My own academic field is studying education and training systems around the world and how they relate to changes in the world of work and economic performance. And I've certainly learned the old adage that it's a lot easier to research and teach that stuff than to have to do it yourself. But definitely agree with everything that's been shared in terms of the leadership lessons. But I think more seriously, the real lesson that I take away is when institutions or organizations face their biggest challenges, when you really have blows to the community like we've had, when we had deaths that affected the whole community, or the Tree of Life shooting. It's the way the institution and the people that make it up come together that show its true character. And it's what's reinforced for Sue and me just how special Chatham is, and that sense of people being there for each other, the deep commitment that they have to the institution, to our neighbors, to the community in Pittsburgh, I think has shown through in those moments, and it's why we get up each day and do what we're doing.
It's an incredible well to be able to draw from. As you move forward, Bernie, you wanted to?
One of you wonderful Chatham women reminded me before we started this conversation of something else I learned during my presidency, which came from one of my kids. I was grumbly one morning about all the pressures and all the things I had scheduled to do. I was traveling to New York to try and see some foundation people. And my younger son said, "Mom, I figured out what a college president is." And I said, "Dan?" And he said, "It's someone who lives in a big house and begs."
I love it. Yeah, I often have thought, as someone who spent 20 years as a business reporter and still obviously follows management and strategy in part of my role at the Allegheny Conference and even on television today, that being a college president has to be one of the toughest managerial challenges that there is.
Being a dean's harder.
Being a dean is actually harder? Wow, okay. That's good. No, I feel for you all in that respect. Another question from the audience who came to Chatham to make her career transition. And since maybe this is an opportunity to talk about your career transitions after you left here. David, you don't have to answer this one. But kind of, yeah, each of you has moved on, since your tenure here. I guess, what have you been doing lately, and how do you think your experience here really prepared you for the next phases in your career and your life? Alberta?
I realized when I got to the Gatehouse yesterday, late afternoon, that I had moved from Fifth Avenue here to another Fifth Avenue.
Oh.
I went to New York City for a job at the Rockefeller Foundation, which took me all over the world and involved me in a lot of problems and people's efforts to solve them and give them money to try and do it. I was the first woman, by the way, first woman hired to give away money, build program, and give away money at the Rockefeller Foundation.
Wow. That was also man's work back in those days. No kidding. Wow.
All my colleagues were male. There's one senior woman, but she was in management. she had to decide where we housed things and the archive and our furniture and whatever. Anyway, it was a very, very different world, and I was there for a long time. Like Chatham, it was a hard job to give up. But I've been out of Rockefeller now for quite a long time. I've continued to work. I'm an active consultant. I build a lot of programs, international and national, for which I now have to raise money. So it's been a very active, long career, and I'm still at it, even though none of you can say this. None of you. I'm 86, so.
Good for you. Wow.
That's wonderful. And now I can't wait until I can say I'm 87.
I love it. Keep going as long as you have something to give. That's what life's all about. Louise, how about you? I mean, you kind of left, but you didn't. You've been on the board this entire time. But yeah, what have you been doing since then?
As some may know, prior to my interim presidency in 1990, I spent 20 years as Director of Parks and Recreation for the city of Pittsburgh. It's kind of a switch, as well as being chairman of and involved with the Chatham Board. After the year here, I thought, I need to find a job. And I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to take a position at Shadyside Hospital, which is just down the street, and has many of the same supporters and leaders as Chatham. So it was a nice transition for me. And I have been there now 25 years. Not quite 87, but getting close to that. And so that was actually, Chatham provided me a wonderful opportunity to move on out. I had been in city government long enough to move on to something which is very rewarding and is a great institution as well. And even though we did survive the merger with UPMC, we have continued to be a great institution and a hospital for the community.
Wonderful. Esther, how about you? Life after Chatham.
Right. Well, I do think that I want not to fail at retirement. So I'm trying to figure out how to define it still. I'm busy. I serve on 2 boards. As you might hear, I'm deeply interested in the history of higher education and in the variety of institutions. So I serve on the board of a historically black institution in Washington, D.C., a public institution, which has been a world of learning and growth for me. And I also serve on the board of the American University of Rome, in Italy, not Rome, Georgia, as I am pursuing Italian citizenship at the dual citizenship. I have to learn the language. But I also do bits and bobs of consulting, and I've done some in the area of higher ed accreditation. But I really do want to figure out how not to fail at retirement. You know, one of the things when you're a CEO and you have a staff is all of a sudden you don't, and you have to do all the work yourself. So it takes a long time to live. And I am enjoying, some of you may know that I married in 2015 and moved to Washington, D.C. So I'm now the mother and stepmother of 5 children and 4 grandchildren, and I enjoy that very much. We leave next week for China and Tibet. I do a great deal of traveling. So I'm enjoying life.
Very cool, all the way around. Yeah, that's excellent. All 3 of you. Great accomplishments. David, so I'm not going to ask you that question since hopefully you're still here. I think, and turned in his resignation this morning or anything. So assuming you're going to be here for a while, and thinking more now, and this is really one of the questions from the audience as well, kind of where is this school today, this university, kind of where do you see it going in the not too distant future? Kind of what is your vision for where Chatham goes from here?
Absolutely. So, the data I shared about the growth we've had, one of the most encouraging pieces of that, but also the huge challenge the sector is facing is that if you look around us, Almost every other small private institution is experiencing the reverse, right? So they are seeing a decline. So the fact that the value, the perceived attractiveness of a Chatham education is going up gives us a tremendous platform for the future. And so what we're trying to do is get, and what people will see tonight at the gala is reinvesting and building this campus out to where we think it can be, with a solid core of 1,400 undergraduate full-time students, a really strong liberal arts foundation for the undergraduate, but then investing more in building the programs we already have in place that are among the most successful in the country in online, in areas like the Doctor of Nursing Practice and the Doctor of Occupational Therapy. We want to be able to serve more adult learners. We want to be able to serve the huge number of individuals in Pennsylvania who started a degree but haven't been able to complete one and yet need it for the changing needs of the workforce. And we want to be able to realize the full vision of the Eden Hall campus. So we now, with the Falk School, have had tremendous growth in both the undergraduate and the graduate level, but we're looking at ongoing certificates for industry, working on executive education with firms, and thinking about how do we take that amazing resource of nearly 400 acres and build it out as a truly model living learning community for the key issues we face around sustainability. And so we're having to juggle, as is inevitable in higher ed, multiple balls at once, but we really think there's a tremendous opportunity for Chatham to be, alongside our neighbors Carnegie Mellon and Pitt, a troika of world-class universities here, all cooperating together to help move Pittsburgh forward.
I wonder, though, you got what, 35 colleges and universities in southwestern Pennsylvania, 10 of them in Allegheny County. Isn't it kind of cutthroat and dog-eat-dog these days, with given our flat population and competition in general for students?
Well, it's a blend. I mean, I think one of our biggest distinctive advantages for Chatham, when you're looking at liberal arts colleges around the country, and we went through this with our two children, it's very rare you can get a campus that looks like this, that you can have an opportunity to be in a place where you really get to work one-on-one with your professors and know it, and yet at the same time be able to take courses for free at Carnegie Mellon and Pitt. And so the fact that you have this 10-college consortia within the city of Pittsburgh, and that includes, of course, being able to go to Duquesne and Robert Morris and others, but because of the proximity and the strength of those, that's where most of our students would take advantage. That's a unique advantage, and so I think it really serves us well. I do worry for the wider environment, because we're already seeing it, right? We know that there are probably more institutions of higher ed than there are high school graduates in the state to serve them. And so I think we're going to be seeing tough times ahead, and that's why, being able to reinvest and being able to focus on what makes Chatham truly distinctive, the fact that we're bucking those trends in such a significant way is what gives us hope for the future.
Yeah, Esther,
I just wanted to praise David for mentioning the degree completers as a new constituency, because the fallacy which existed when we were focusing just narrowly on undergraduate residential liberal arts education for women was those parameters, narrowing parameters for who your audience is. But I mean, the last time I looked, the US was 14th in the world for the number of people who completed undergraduate degrees, including only associate's degrees. There is a large undegreed population out there, and it is really important to the future of this country to not be number 14 in the world in how many of us. So it's looking at new populations, new definitions of what we're doing, and I'm excited to hear you say that's a goal.
Well, but of course the nice thing for Chatham, and kind of coming back to the history, is it's not really new for us, right? So when you mentioned Alberta and the Gateway program, the methods we'll reach them are new. The reason they're non-completers may be different than they were in the 60s and 70s, but through the Gateway program, we have a long history of enabling people to go back, complete their degrees, to change careers. And so we see it as very much in line with Chatham's values, just a new way of thinking about who we serve and how we do it.
Yeah, I stopped in at the brunch, and a little shyly, but a lot of women who were at Chatham when I was here, as I mentioned, came up to talk, and I honestly think that what's most, if you will, marketable is the spirit and sense of learning, the sense of life learning that those women mentioned to me in our brief encounters this morning. One after another, they said, it helped me find my voice, it gave me spirit, it taught me how to do what I need to do, it made me proud. I came from a small town and I grew up here. I was one after another after another. And what they told me when I asked about what they're doing now is actually what they set out to do. They're in journalism, they're in law, they're in corporations. They are, and were, many of them in the arts. We haven't talked about that, but the arts at Chatham were another huge strength. But the point is that what they took away from this place was the ability to be a better and a full human being, and that's the message, I think. For this
Well, and at the end of the day, that's probably what it's all about. How about a round of applause for our past and present presidents of Chatham University? Thank you all so much. Oh, well. Well,
The ones you picked were great.
yeah, I've got most of it.
They're not there? Well, we don't need to worry about it, do we?
Thank you for joining us this morning. Quick announcement, if you are registered for a luncheon, class of 1969, your 50th reunion luncheon is the Mellon Living Room next to where you checked in at the lobby. Everybody else, head to the tent if you registered for lunch. If not, we'll make a seat for you. Thank you.